Hi, I'm Ree and I'm a psychology teacher and examiner for AQA. This revision video focuses on the social change section of the social influence topic. So there are a few processes that society goes through in order to bring about social change. So the first one is drawing attention to the issue, and I've used the civil rights movement here to demonstrate what I mean. So civil rights marches, civil rights campaigners, a few individuals initially started to draw attention to the issue through protests and marching and getting people's attention. Secondly, they kept doing this. They kept protesting, they kept demonstrating in public to show the consistency of their message and the intent that they had. And we've already talked about in the previous section about how important consistency is in persuading a majority group. So once they've been consistent for a while with drawing attention to this issue, we then have something called deeper processing in the majority group. People start to think about and really deeply think about the unjustness or the inequality in society in this particular case. The augmentation principle demonstrates commitment. We talked about commitment in the previous topic as well, and how it's important to demonstrate how much you believe in what you're saying. So the augmentation principle is taking big risks to demonstrate that. So for example, freedom riders would sit on the buses where they shouldn't, and they were beaten as a result. The snowball effect we discussed in minority influence as well. So over time, a few individuals are joined by a few more individuals, and that gathers momentum. So eventually the minority then becomes the majority. And then that usually brings around policy change. So the government passes a law to show that they're listening to public opinion. So in this case, the American government passed the Civil Rights Act. Eventually, because the minority is now becoming the majority, because it is seen as the norm, so we have normative social influence happening, we have something called social cryptomnesia. This is where we forget originally where the idea came from or when the opinion started to change. We have no memory of how those changes really came about. So the suffragette movement is another example that you could use, either as description in an essay or as an evaluation point to demonstrate the processes and social change. So they drew attention to the issue through militant tactics like chaining themselves to fences, protests and marches, educational leaflets, etc. They also showed commitment through the augmentation principle. They went on hunger strike, they faced imprisonment, some even died. And they did this consistently for 15 years. And even if they were in prison when they came out, they'd go back on hunger strike, for instance, and they kept campaigning consistently for a long period of time. So this obviously created deeper processing in the minds of the minority, leading to the snowball effect where gradually more and more people converted to their viewpoint based on informational social influence. And so the government had to start listening, and they changed the policy so that women could start to vote. Nowadays, most of us probably don't remember or even know how these changes came about unless we learn them at school. So we have a form of social cryptomnesia there. So what else have we learned from all the social influence research that we have examined about how to change people's opinion? Well, in terms of conformity, first of all, we've learned that if there's a dissenter, they're willing to break the unanimity of the group, then that is going to help people be more independent in their decisions. We also know that normative social influence is still very influential. So if you want somebody to conform, make them feel like they need to fit in with the group. So an example of that is litter. So there was a campaign that went, bin it, others do. It suggests that everybody's doing it, so therefore you should be doing it as well. Obedience research has taught us about what we call the foot in the door phenomenon or gradual commitment. This is the idea if we get people to commit to something small, over time they'll find it harder to back out and then commit even further. If you take Milgram's study, everyone started with one single shock, but they continued to up the shock levels because they felt obliged to keep continuing. And you can see this with charities and so on, get them to commit, by signing up for a newsletter or putting your name on a mailing list, and then they start asking you for donations. And we find it harder to back out because of that. So to show how powerful normative social influence can be in bringing about change is this study by Nolan et al. So in America, in California, they put messages on the front doors of some houses saying that people are trying to reduce energy in their neighborhood. Whereas in some houses, they had a leaflet that just said we should try and cut down energy and save energy, but it didn't make any reference to what other people were doing. And they found that those who had the message saying that other people were cutting down their energy were decreasing their own energy use as a result, in comparison to the group where we didn't talk about other people. However, normative social influence doesn't always work in influencing other people to change their opinions. Boxcroft reviewed 70 studies where they tried to use normative social influence to persuade students to reduce the amount of alcohol that they were drinking. And actually what they found was there was only a small reduction in the quantity of drinking that they were doing, and in terms of how often they were doing it, there was no effect at all. So this suggests that normative social influence doesn't always produce long-term social change. So one criticism, finally, on Moscovici's work on minority influence is actually majorities are probably more effective in changing opinion. So Mackey said that actually majorities will bring about deeper processing and make us more likely to change our point of view, because when we think the majority have a different opinion to us, we're more likely to listen to them because we want to fit in, i.e. normative social influence. So if they think something different, we're going to ponder on it, we're going to think about it a lot harder than if it was a minority group trying to tell us a different opinion. So therefore, majority influence may have a bigger impact on social change than minority influence. That brings us to the end of this revision video. If you found this video helpful, then hit subscribe for more revision help. And you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok for psychology related content. And of course, you can find a range of revision resources available at psychologywithre.com.